Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 Town of Dudley Planning Board meeting. Present this evening, we have Mr. Richard Clark, Vice Chairman, Mr. Steve Wydrova, Clerk of the Board, Thomas Chinaki, Member, Daniel Edmiston, Member, and William Scanlon, our Town Planner, and myself, Guy Horn, Chairman. First item on the agenda for this evening, approval of minutes from September 22nd, 2021. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I saw an error on here. I was wondering if we could maybe correct it. Sorry. Let's see.
Tab B.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Just don't have my glasses on. Item number 2, standard business. Item E, Open Farm Estates. That whole discussion, we decided to vote to have that meeting. The vote totals are listed as 3 in the affirmative, 0 against, and 1 abstain. The correct vote total should be 3 in the affirmative, 1 against, 1 abstain.
Okay.
I can clarify that if anybody needs.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so Guy had joined us at that point when we did that vote. Richard, myself, and Guy were in the affirmative. Mr. Chinaki was against, and Dan was the abstention.
Okay, thank you.
So it's 3, 1, and 1.
Right. Good catch, Mr. Wydrova. Okay, so could we, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment that Mr. Wydrova just pointed out?
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we approve the minutes of September 22nd, 2021 as amended.
Okay, we have a vote. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Just to check, Mr. Edmiston, you did get your sworn in?
Yep,
Okay.
2 weeks ago, sworn in, good to go.
Thank you.
Got my new official card.
Great.
I'm a happy camper.
Great.
Can we sign these, or do we have to wait for the revision?
I can just change page 2,
Yeah, we only signed the back page, so
so we won't change the
should be okay. We need 2 copies.
Yeah, 2 starting, almost like that.
So, next on the agenda, A&R plans, none.
Mr. Chairman, received the plan today from Tom Ravane for Lyons Estates.
Okay,
It just came in today, so I'm not sure what the board's pleasure is. If you want to act on it tonight, I brought the plan in case you wanted to do so, or if you wanted to wait till the next meeting, we could do that as well.
okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Want to take this up tonight or put it on the next meeting?
I have no problems with seeing it tonight.
Mr. Wydrova?
No. Go along with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
then we'll see it tonight.
Tom, you want to come up and explain the plan?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Good evening. Thank you for seeing it tonight.
Too many microphones.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Well, what we had to do is change a couple of the dimensions on the lots, on lots 13 and 14. Just because when the original plan was designed, they had a kind of an odd shape on some of these lots. So we wanted to, and lot 12 was a little too narrow. So what we want to do is to accommodate a house that we want to build on that house, we're making that lot a little bit wider, kind of make them all a little bit more uniform. So we've kind of taken 10 feet off of 13 and added it. That little strip, parcel L, is going to be added to lot 12, the Barnes property. That's all we're gonna do there, and we straightened out, there's a lot line on lot 14 that kinda had a little bit of a bend to it. We just kinda squared it up so the homes would fit nicer on the property. So it was just a minor change to the inner lots in the subdivision. I filed the Form A with Bill, and had Jimmy Smith, the engineer, design that for us. So nothing's really changed, we haven't changed, we've just added a little bit of frontage to lot 12, just because it was a little narrow, it was only about a 60-foot build with the setbacks, and we wanted at least a 70-foot build, which is the same on most of the other lots. 13 and 14 have plenty of room to build, they have 142 feet of frontage.
Now, when you say 13 and 14, you're talking about 13R and
13R and 14R, yes, I'm sorry, yep. And parcel L, that little strip is gonna be added to, which is lot 12, which is Megan and Matt Barnes' property, just to give them a little bit more frontage. Has 100 feet, you know, it just, now it's gonna be 110, just so the build, the way it's angled on that property, with the way it's facing the road, it only gave us about a 60-foot wide with the 13 feet on, I mean, the 15 feet on each side on the setbacks. So we wanted to put a little bit, we have a little bit longer house, the colonial that's going on there. So we just wanted to add that extra 10 feet to them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
There's only about 3,000 feet that would be switching hands between the two, 3,000 square feet between the two lots. I would like to know, though, how many square feet are in each lot, just to double check the Res 30 requirement.
I believe it's shown on the plan.
It's shown on the plan.
Am I missing it?
Not on the Megan and
Oh,
that one, yeah. Where's
yeah,
it?
so the one on lot 13R is being shown as 34,609, but there's nothing on there for the Megan and Matthew Barnes lot.
That was already approved, we're not changing that. We're just
So is,
adding,
so is it 34,609 what is left now, or what was there, is what's left?
Yes, that would be the new area.
Okay, so it was about 37,000 whatever, now it's 34,000 whatever.
correct, on lot 13R,
Okay,
correct, yep.
makes sense, thank you.
So is there a form filled out for this?
Yes.
And is there waivers requested?
No.
Because I'm not seeing topography or,
Well, the plan was already approved, the definitive plan.
okay,
We've already approved that, so this is just a lot line change.
okay.
So why is this done as an A&R if it's not an approved road yet?
The subdivision control law allows for modification of lot lines within an approved subdivision, in the same manner as if it was on a town road, except a town road, because the planning board has approved the plan and has security in place to make
Okay.
sure that road gets built. So the subdivision control has a specific allowance to make A&R.
So, but why do you use the A&R as opposed to the minor modification? Why can't this?
Because we're changing lot lines,
Okay, so that.
and so that, it has to have a plan attached to it.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. But I mean, unless I'm missing something, I do agree though with, well, I guess it would be approved, it was approved, so it had to have the 30,000 square feet, but we don't know what the total is gonna be for the new lot.
So this plan is just creating parcel L. That's really, and then, as Tom mentioned, there's a minor lot line change to straighten out a
But
bend in a lot line.
Parcel L is gonna be combined with this,
That will be done, I think, through a deed rather than through an actual plan change. So
Okay.
the deed will combine those two, parcel L and that lot.
okay. All right, so all we're voting on is creating parcel L.
Excuse me?
So all the vote is to create parcel L.
Yes.
Okay.
So just as an FYI for myself, when you're dividing a parcel and creating a new parcel, you don't have to come before the planning board, but when you're adding to, you don't have to, but when you're dividing, you do?
No, anytime you're changing lot lines, you should bring it to the planning board for approval.
Okay, so that way I'm confused about the last answer, because what you're saying, we're creating parcel L right now,
Right.
but we're not voting on the combination of L and the Megan and Matthew Barnes lot. That would come with a deed.
Parcel L is not intended to be a building lot, it's just.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, right. So all they're doing is creating that parcel so that it can be combined with the adjacent lot.
At that time, would the applicant have to come before us?
No, because parcel L will already exist. So you're not changing lot lines, you're really just adding by deed that section. of
So that's my
parcel L.
question, but if I'm combining two lots, I have to come before the planning board.
Right.
But in this instance, he's not, so I don't understand the exception. I guess this has not nothing to do with you, just more or less my information.
Well, they are coming before you for that change.
To create the empty lot, to create the non-buildable lot, but not to combine the two. Is it, maybe this
Yeah,
isn't relevant. I'm
But you
just-
can do it by deed, you don't, if
So-
you're not having a plan approved, you don't need to come to the planning board. It's
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, all we are doing this evening then is creating parcel L.
Yes,
And this parcel L being a non-conforming lot, by deed would have to go with the Megan and Matthew Barnes lots.
Or it could go to 13R if
It
they
could go
want.
anywhere.
Either one.
But it would have to go with one.
But it's
It can't- it
coming
can't
out
just-
of-
It can't just sit out.
It's coming out of 14R, and, 13R.
Right.
So it's going to 12.
But you're not supposed to create a non-conforming
Right, but-
lot unless it goes.
But that's what
What you're talking, speaking to is your intent. What you intend to do with it. What you could do with it is something else.
Right, I mean, we're doing
Yeah.
that because we're adding to the lot, it's gonna be deeded over by council.
So it's gonna be land swapped over to the Megan lot, that parcel
Yeah.
L?
Yeah.
And the owner of 13R doesn't have a problem with that?
No, he signed off on the Form A. It actually makes the lots a little bit more uniform all the way across when you look at them.
So we had something on, I don't know the name of the lot anymore, where the applicant was trying to, if I remember correctly, what they thought was a border between the two pieces of property wasn't. And the applicant wanted to bring it back to the original. And the owner of the other piece of land wasn't here. And we said that really can't be done without having some kind of verbal or some kind of indication from both owners. So now we're hearing that lot 13R has an owner, that lot Megan and Matthew Barnes has an owner. We're creating a piece of property with or without lot 13R's approval. And then we're creating a non-conforming lot that we no longer have jurisdiction over. I'm not following the common
Well,
sense
the-
behind any of this. I mean, I have nothing against what you're planning on doing, I just don't understand the whole
well,
procedure
the
here.
owner of the lot that's being reduced is Galaxy,
Correct.
who is the applicant. The Barnes lot isn't affected at
I
this
I
point
thought
in
the
time.
answer implied that, when the answer, the question was, does the owner okay with that? And I just, when you said yes, I just implied, it implied in my mind that lot was sold already. If it's not, that makes no
No, it's
difference.
not. Right, that's right.
Okay,
Right.
that's different then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So lot 13R is not sold?
No.
It's not sold.
I thought at our last meeting, we had this whole discussion about, remember the open space
Yep.
discussion?
Oh, yeah, I remember it very well.
I thought you said that all of these lots were sold or on deposit.
Read the minutes, I never, ever said that. I have 13, 14, 15, and 16 on deposit. I've never sold out everything in the subdivision. I've never said that. Never once did I say that, because they're not, I would not, we still have 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 available. And at that time, we still had 13, 14, 15, and 16. We had 8 sold. So I would never have said that the subdivision is sold out. I just said that it was never approved with any open space policy. There was never an open space on this subdivision that got approved that way. The open space was put originally on the 2007 plan That was the only thing that was informed me for Lot 6. I said Lot 6 was sold, is what I had said. And
Okay,
then-
yeah,
So
all
Lot
right,
6, I
that
said,
makes
was
sense.
sold. And then David, at the time, when it was reviewed by our council and everybody else's council, that said the subdivision rules and regulations was an active approved subdivision that was put on Lot 6. So for 07, 8, 9, 10, 11, they had an option for the town. Those were the 3 years that the town had the option to buy that piece of property, which they did not. At that point in time, when this got it was the same subdivision that we did. We didn't go for reapproval. We went for an updated version of that subdivision, right? Is that correct, Phil?
It was a
A
modification.
modification of the existing subdivision. So the 3-year period for that open space policy had already passed since the beginning of the subdivision when it was done back in '07. Therefore, it was never put on as an open space needed in that, when it got modified. Therefore, that's why they never went for the release of that, because it already had expired. It already had the 3-year option from the original date that this subdivision was approved in '07.
So if I do the math, you're saying that that requirement expired 11 years ago?
Correct. That's why it was never brought up when this got modified, and it was never an issue or never discussed in any of the meetings, and there were several meetings on this, and never was brought up and never brought to anyone's attention, because that had already surpassed since the original approval back in '07.
Then why was it modified in 2000?
I wasn't involved in that in 2000.
In 2019, you mean?
Or,
when it was submitted?
2019, 2020, yeah.
The
'Cause it was-
regulations had changed a bit since the plan was originally approved, so we had to come back with a new plan showing the inconformance with the then regulations.
The non-conformance of, so there was,
So there were new requirements
okay,
put in place since the original plan approval.
but like the layout of the road or the lot,
didn't
number of
change.
lots,
No, that
nothing
didn't
changed?
change.
Everything was the
I
same?
think it was more construction details that changed.
Okay,
And some of the lots were reconfigured a bit, but it was the same number of lots. And the layout was essentially the same, but there were some minor changes.
I'm just curious, like, in creating lot parcel L, why not take the additional 45 feet at the back of that, rather than having an L-shaped lot?
To make the build zone correct with the numbers, is why they had to do that. Originally, that was one of the changes they made, I believe, in the 11th hour of the planning board meeting, requested by the board to make, by the engineer. That was one of the changes, I think, back in May when it finally got approved, to make sure all the numbers for the build area and all that were correct.
You need some uplands.
Yep.
Yes, there was one lot that,
One lot didn't
Didn't
conform with what it had, so
conform to
they
the lot
changed a
shape.
couple of the lot lines, because it did go straight back originally on the original plan.
14R is, looks like there's a lot of water.
Yeah. I mean, this is a 1 to 40 scale, so it's still 100 and, something feet back.
I don't have any issues with this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion for the A&R plan?
Mr. Chairman, I was hoping we could get with Mr. Vervain here this evening, I was hoping maybe we could get an answer on what was brought to our attention regarding the,
Okay, if you'd like to bring it up, you make it?
Mr. Chairman, we have a 7:15 hearing scheduled. I mean, there's nobody here,
Okay,
so I don't know whether you want to just postpone that until we complete the discussion with Tom, or whether you want to open the hearing and
Did we want to conclude business with regards to this issue before we went on to that, or did we see these two things as somehow packaged?
I can make a motion if the board's pleasure, unless you want to continue conversation, or I
I
don't
mean,
know.
we could just postpone that hearing for however long this
I
takes.
don't have any problem, there's nobody here waiting for it, so.
All right. Yeah, let's finish up this one, and then we'll move on to the public hearing. All right.
oh, so it was brought to the board's attention that the cut into the road for the utilities up there on Lyons Road,
Yep,
it's a narrow strip, comes out,
correct.
and then turns and goes down the road. My recollection is that originally, the agreement we had was that it was gonna be a full cut, full width of the road,
Correct,
and we gave our reasoning for that.
right.
So can you tell me why it's not?
Because the reasoning for that full cut was because the water line had a cut across the whole entire road. And then, so we had a cut going out this way and then down, which is, the road's cut, that whole road's cut all the way down anyway. That road's a mess. So We cut almost the same line where the gas line was, just to the right of it, and we sealed the same line, and we actually went all around the manhole. I cut past it and redid, because that was all caving in on there, so we rebuilt all around the manhole. The water line was supposed to now go straight out across the road and then cut, I don't know, 20, 30 feet down to the right to the fire hydrant. So the process to get that all paved, cut all the way across. Now, granted, I wasn't in that meeting, so I knew, I saw that on the plan. I wasn't here when he discussed the plan it all down. He said, but I knew, I read the meetings, I watched what was said, and it said that because there's gonna be a cut this way and a cut that way, the road's all gonna be cut up. So the choice was to, instead of having it look like a puzzle, go all the way across and go all the way. Well, now that we've put $70,000 worth of water line in all the way down, because that was approved by this board to put the fire hydrant down the middle of the subdivision, which got changed and now nullified, and now we're not even connecting anything that we're putting in, and that got voted out in the board. So now we're not cutting across the road we're not gonna make a mess of the road and cut open. And I kind of agreed, as yes, if you're cutting over that way and cutting that way, and you got cuts all the way down, that's one thing.
Then what are you tying into in the road?
We're not tying anything into the road.
Just the sewer.
We tied in the sewers, we're done. We have
That's-
wells.
That's the cut that we're talking about.
Right, but there was two cuts. The reason why they wanted us to go all the way across from side to side is because we had that cut going down that way. We had the water line, which was a bigger cut going straight across the road to the complete other side of the road, and then all the way down that side of the road, and then into the hydrant. So the road was gonna be cut on both sides of the road, kind of torn up all the way across.
Mr. Chairman, I recall that conversation, at the time, the board member that we had on the board was Mr. Lou Perrin. And Mr. Lou Perrin had explained that the reason why the cut should be the full width of the road was because by making a narrow cut, as it has been done now, that lends itself to the problem of settling, causing a very, for lack of a better term, a whoop-de-doo over there.
Not if it's done correctly. It has to be, it was done and approved and compacted correctly. This cuts that entire road. If you wanna walk it with me, I'll be glad to walk that whole road with every member up here and look at every single cut on every 20 feet in that road. It's been cut, filled, spliced, that road is a mess. We
But
actually.
just to make it clear,
We
what
filled
we
it right,
agreed
but-
upon.
Right,
What we agreed upon and what
Right.
was put into the plan
right.
was that you were gonna do full cut.
Only if, and one of the reasons was to cut, because we had to cut up the road in multiple different spots.
But I
We
don't
don't have to
understand.
do that.
I don't Mr. Chairman, I don't understand why no one on the board was contacted and why anyone said, hey, I've got a really good reason why I think we shouldn't do it this way. Would the board reconsider their decision?
We came in to, not to interrupt you, but we did that to get that done. If we were gonna cut across the road, we would be doing that when we're doing all the paving anyway. So that's not even something we would do right now. Because we're gonna put a top coat over that whole road. We've gotta dig up that whole first part of Truman Road. And honestly, I was gonna come in and ask the board for a change on that, because we don't feel like it's necessary to do right now. We're not at that stage. That stage of paving, cutting all the way across that road and putting in, 50 feet of beautiful road on a road that needs to be all redone. At this point right now, I'm just saying that the town was there and watched us. We compacted in multiple lifts, put all the right material in. We saw cut the road, we made it nice and clean, and we did the cut correctly. And our goal was to get the sewer line in and tied in. And we had the pressure test done, we did all the right things with the town. We have to kind of cut down that whole entire beginning of that road that was paved anyway. And then we gotta put the top coat over and do all that. And I would assume that the board, if we were gonna cut across the road and do all that, which I was hoping we wouldn't have to, at one point I wanted to come in and talk to the board about that, which we're gonna have, I'm sure, several other meetings before we get to the stage of completion. And it would make sense to me that when we put the top coat on, that would be the time to grind that road down, run the top coat all the way out and do the whole road so it's like one continuous road. Instead of putting one big patch right now, and then we're still gonna have to cut in and try to tie the road together. So it's not out of the cards, I'm not asking for anything, that's how we tied it in, and that's the way everything everything was tied in. Eisenhower Road was all tied in, the gas line ran a trench all the way down that entire road, and was never asked by the town to do that on the why was the gas company allowed to do that and not have to go all the way across? I don't know. Why are we, I know Lou did that, he sells asphalt, so maybe he said, okay, cut across the road and put it in. And if it's cut up, I agree, we wanted the entryway to look nice, and I remember talking to Lou about that.
So what you're telling us is basically when you get to the finished course
Yeah.
on your subdivision, you wouldn't have a problem of saw cutting the road and going across the width of your road to the other side?
I was gonna come in and ask that we don't have to do that because we don't have to put a water line in anymore. We're not digging up the entire road the way we were. If we have to do it now from where we dug up, it's gonna be split right down the middle of the road, so not the whole entryway to the subdivision is getting done. That's how it was gonna have to be if we had to dig up. It was where we dug up the road, but we didn't do the water line. So that whole right side of the road all the way down, we didn't touch, we didn't do anything to that.
Mr. Chairman, the fact that they're not doing the water line now doesn't change anything for me. They still got a utility going in there. They still got the sewer line.
Right, but it's only on the left side all the way down, it's in. So if we were gonna scarify the road and go all the way down, we're gonna do from where we did, where we cut, and we did it all. And we've already paved, we put 6 inches of asphalt in there, all approved by the town, so it's only the left side and the right side of where we did.
Again, Mr. Perrin did a much better job than I am of explaining what the reasoning was behind requesting that. It has nothing to do with the fact that the line doesn't go all the way across Lyons Road. It has to do with the way that cars hit that patch when they're crossing that area.
I disagree with you because I was here and talked to Lou about that. The reason why he didn't want to have it crossed in multiple ways, he said it's gonna look like a mess. We've put trenches in, you guys do it all over the town. Everybody, if our trenches are gonna settle.
I think we want to limit the discussion to this particular area. Whatever exists on Truman Drive or Eisenhower or anywhere else, I don't think is necessarily relevant to the question at hand.
Right.
I know you like to bring in all of these collateral issues.
No, I don't like to bring it
all
in,
that,
believe me,
but
I would rather be,
let's
I don't
take-
wanna be
let's-
here even talking
let's-
about this right
If
now.
we may, please, I would ask that we stick to the issue at hand or the question at hand. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would agree with Mr. Wetruba, it doesn't change. You said you were gonna do it, we made it a condition of the subdivision plan, now you're not doing it. So I would say you got, the only choice that I see is that you can, if you're agreeing to do it at the end, when it's all top coated, that's fine.
That was our plan originally to do.
That would be
at the
fine
very
with
end.
me,
That
because I
makes
think you'd get a
sense.
better job and everything
Right.
would be seamless.
Right.
You'd have 2 seams across the road, but they would be
Right.
much wider than a 2-foot trench.
Which I don't have a problem with, and I never said that that we would have a problem with that. I just say it was gonna be, our intent was to do that at the end on the final top coat, which, we wouldn't wanna do it now. Our goal now is to put a patch in, let the patch settle, because if we went across the road right now, to be honest with you, and put a nice, and scarified it all down, that trench still could settle, because you would want it to go through a frost and thaw, at least 1 frost and thaw, maybe 2, before we do that. Just because you put a top coat all the way across the road, that's a new trench, that could still settle. And if you're familiar with roadworks and anything else, you would know that can happen. Unless, because we compacted it, did it in lifts, built it right, the town was there, they approved it. My thought would be to let it, put a few years on it. That's why we didn't push the pave last year. We wanted Truman Drive to go through a frost and thaw before we paved it, because we could have paved, if we rushed to pave it last year, and we did discuss that at the board, and we got settlements, that road could be like this, we could have settled, we don't know. Luckily, it held up very well through the winter. We've got a lot of gravel in there. We built that road right, and we're gonna go through another frost and thaw this year, so by the time it's done, all the settlement should be pretty well in place. And that to me makes sense as far as road building is concerned.
All right, so when we get to the final paving course, we're not gonna have to address this again. We're gonna that's what's gonna be done, and we're gonna have a final paving course that goes right across.
That's what it says on the board. We just did what we had to do right now to get the sewer line in, and that was the way to do it. Patching across the road makes no sense right now, because it will settle, and if it settled, we wouldn't come back and redo it, because it doesn't say do it twice. Do it right once,
All right,
so.
everybody happy with the answer?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I
Sure.
think the question was Mr. Wetruba's, as I understand it.
Sure.
What we're looking at is not the finished product. What you
Correct.
have in place today is something that is going to be enhanced or improved in future.
Correct.
I'm not too sure, Mr. Chairman, if it might not be out of order, but I wonder if we could, since there's been a change in regime at the Highway Department, ask Mr. Murray's expertise when the final product is in place and see if he can attest to the fact that it is in conformance with what was agreed to.
I think when we had the famous super pave meeting,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he already weighed in on that.
Well,
He didn't have an issue with the requirements. By the way, those granite curbs gonna still be there?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
all right. I took it that that was a discussion in regards to the paving material specifically. I didn't know that
Right, he was
it
against the
extended
super
beyond
pave,
that.
so the super pave went away.
Yes.
We did discuss the full
Okay.
width curb cut and the granite. We discussed it that night, I remember, because I
We
figured.
didn't do the full width curb cut because Lou wasn't here then. I've only talked to Lou about
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I would yield to Mr. Wetruba's recollection.
Yeah. So, I mean, we did talk about the granite curbs and I think you
Yeah,
agreed
I
that we put
remember
them in.
the granite curbs.
And that's not even an issue. I don't, we shouldn't, that discussion should be, should be done because we
Right,
agreed.
it shouldn't be an issue, I agree.
No, it isn't an issue. I didn't bring it up.
If
but-
it wasn't brought to my attention or the board, to our attention, that, there was a cut that was narrow, I am taking your explanation that this is just a temporary,
Yeah.
but you also did admit that your intention was to come in.
I was gonna come in because we didn't have to cut the road. I was gonna ask the board to like you had said.
Personally,
But not until we're done the subdivision, and maybe I might, I don't know, I mean, it's not even a thought, we did the correct way to do it. You patch it right now and you let it settle, go through a frost and thaw, let it see how it is, see how we might have to touch it up, and when it settles through another winter. We've gotta guarantee that work that we did. We're obviously not, if it settles in any shape, way, or form, we have to correct that. That's the entryway to the subdivision. We want the subdivision to look nice. We've got a big investment there. We're not just trying to skim by and do something on a whim. It's gotta look nice. We've got a lot of properties sold, a lot of interest in there, and there's a lot of, most of the homes in there are good tax-paying people. They're all $500,000, $600,000 homes, which is great for the town. So, I mean, we're doing everything right. I bought a sweeper Saturday to keep the roads clean because it was getting a little dusty. I didn't want any issues, so we're keeping the roads cleaned, swept, all through the whole process of the building, just so it stays nice for, so we don't have any complaints from dust or anything else.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, I'm satisfied for now.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the A&R plan as submitted.
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Let me get a pen so you can sign that.
Need this one,
Let
Bill?
us be your records.
Sign on here as well.
Take that.
We need to sign two of these in the Mylar, right?
We need to sign two of these.
I think two of these and one of those, right?
Yeah,
Two
I'll-
paper
I'll start
and
with here.
one Mylar.
And I'll bring that to the registry.
They're already signed.
That's for your records.
I must have kept a few of the papers. Did you say any more copies?
I want to borrow your pen because I don't want to
Copies
sign
they
with purple.
keep. You keep
We
those?
keep the paper. You have to record the Mylar.
Right. Do you need any other of these copies of those? That's good, right?
I'll be fine with what we've got.
We were close enough.
The surveyor sent me the PDFs.
You signed up?
I have them.
Finally got a hold of them. Send it home.
Good.
Is that it? Has everyone signed the?
No, I got
I'm sorry.
two more,
Oh, okay.
then we'll be done.
And these stay with you, Bill, correct?
Yes.
Okay, moving on, we're a little bit behind on our public hearing on proposed zoning amendments. We had a public hearing at 7:15, it's now 7:35.
Mr. Chairman, the public hearing notice is in tab C.
Tab C.
Great, thank you.
Okay, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Dudley Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 13th at 7:15 PM in the Dudley Municipal Complex, Room 321-A, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. 01571, on the proposed zoning amendments. Number 1, to amend the Dudley zoning map by modifying the existing town refuse disposal, TRD, district to include the following town-owned properties. The entirety of the assessor map 122, lot 07, and map 122, lot 08, and a portion of assessor's map 235, lot 80, for a depth of 250 feet, drawn parallel to the front lot line. Item number 2, to amend the Dudley zoning bylaws and zoning map by creating a new overlay district named Marijuana Cultivation Overlay District, where outdoor cultivation of marijuana would be permitted by special permit of the planning board on parcels containing a minimum of 15 acres. Item number 3, by landowner petition of Robert and Lynn Doherty to amend the Dudley zoning map to place their property on Corbin Road into the Marijuana Cultivation Overlay District. The property is described in the deed record in the Worcester Registry of Deeds at book 58,635, page 327, and shown as parcel 1 on a plan recorded at Plan Book 936, Plan Number 18, comprising of 51.179 plus or minus acres, also known as Assessor's Map 210, Lot 17. The completed text and maps of the proposed amendments are available for public inspection during regular business hours at the Selectman's Office, the Town Clerk's Office, 71 West Main Street, Dudley. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed amendment should appear at time and place designated. Guy Horn, Chairman, Dudley Planning Board. And this says it was advertised on the September 29th and October 6th. Was this Worcester Telegram?
Yes.
Worcester Telegram. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, to explain the first article on the town refuse disposal district, over time, the town expanded the landfill area, and it actually continued on town land, but it exceeded the boundaries of the TRD district.
Okay.
So it went into the Res 30 district. So this article is to rezone that portion, which is currently Res 30, that hosts the landfill, into the TRD district to make that conform to the bylaw. The primary advantage to that is that you will be receiving a site plan for a solar farm on the landfill in the near future. I'm not sure exactly when.
Okay.
So that's only allowed in the TRD district, so it wouldn't be allowed on that portion of the landfill, which is currently Res 30. So by rezoning, it allows for a few extra panels to go on that portion that you're changing. So that's the reason for this amendment. The other two articles were to create overlay districts. The town council, in reviewing these proposals, determined that you cannot create an overlay district without having at least one property to include in that new district. And it was the board's intent to merely create the district now and allow future landowners to come forward and ask to put their property in those overlay districts. So that it would be on the books. The issue would just be a matter of, was it appropriate to rezone a particular property? However, town council has said you can't do it that way. You have to have at least one property at the time you create a district. So these will not be able to be acted on at town meeting on the 25th. The warrant will still contain a citizen's petition from Robert and Lynn Doherty, because that, once the landowner submits a petition, you have to put it on the warrant. But I think will have to be passed over because there's no district
Or
to rezone the
or
property
ruled out of
into.
order, something to that effect, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious, the Dohertys aware of this?
Yes.
Okay.
So it would seem that what we originally had done, the original amendment that we had last year,
Mhm.
with their property attached to it, would have been the proper way of doing it,
Yes.
According to town council.
according to town council. All right, so that, because we're not gonna take it, we're not taking that specific article back up, and we did recommend it last year, that means that we could recommend it again for the fall, or, excuse me, for the spring?
No, it's only good for 6 months. I think, well, no, the public hearing is good for 6 months, I know. Right, no, yes, you're correct, so that as long as you, normally there's a 2-year statute of limitations
yeah.
that you can't bring the same article back within 2 years unless the planning board recommends adoption the first time it went around,
Which we did.
which you did.
And it got
Right.
voted down when it didn't make the 2/3 vote, so we could
You could still-
theoretically take our original article, bring it back
Yes,
for next spring.
that's correct. You still have to have another public hearing
Okay.
on it, but you could do it.
And then if we wanted to, now that we know that this is the situation for overlay districts, if we wanted to do something again with the self-storage, maybe we could pick some, pick some parcels of land and put them in for the start, and then see where they go.
It almost sounds like, pick some lucky contestant.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm sorry, to interrupt.
Nope.
I would like to see if we might not find another mechanism by which we could do some of these things. This overlay district, we have a mill overlay district, we're gonna have a self-storage overlay district, a marijuana overlay district, maybe have a food truck overlay district, a
Solar,
porta potty overlay district. I mean, at some point, this onion gets so complicated that we're gonna end up with a zoning bylaw that's gonna be 9,000 pages, and 300 of those are gonna be overlay districts. I don't know that, can't we do something with the, our chart of uses and special permit? In
Yes,
some of these
sure.
cases anyway.
When you.
Self-storage, for example. I mean, with the marijuana, I think some discussion has been earlier, I believe. We do have CCC, Cannabis Control Commission, oversight, obviously. We do have the host agreement that the selectmen would enforce or enact, if you will, with the applicant. So there's at least a couple of oversight mechanisms, and then on top of that, we would have perhaps the third, which would be the special permit. I don't know that, again, the complication or the muddying of the waters, if you will, with regards to all of these overlay districts seems a little over the top. I mean, I don't know, it sounds like a great idea, but it just starts to be very confusing at some point.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the town planner.
Good.
So if we added as a permitted use marijuana cultivation in, say, a district, say, like Res 83,
87.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Res 87.
Right.
Can you add a stipulation, for instance, the minimum 15-acre lot size? Can that still be added somehow?
Sure, or you could, add that as part of the amendment. Footnote, for example, to the table of uses.
Yeah, footnote.
Okay, all right, because I mean, my biggest problem with the whole idea of just picking a zone and saying, in this zone, you can do this, would be, well, we don't want somebody coming in and saying, well, I got 3 acres, I wanna,
Do an acre and a half.
yeah, I want to do an acre and a half.
Yeah, you could, I think we could put a footnote in. It could be larger than 15 acres too. Could be
But I
20.
think a lot of the opposition to marijuana uses has diminished over time, just as people don't get used to the idea that it's legal and you go into a store now and buy it legally. So I think at the time the bylaw was crafted, it was considered a kind of a controversial issue at that time, so it was very limited and restrictive.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
it might be possible to, rethink some of that initial oversight of the marijuana.
Chairman, to the planner's point, this is becoming more like growing corn or tomatoes, if you will. It's not the exotic, highly regulated substance that it once was. It's now pretty much, I don't think you can go to any town that I can think of in the area where somebody isn't selling it or some derivative from it. Certainly in Oxford, There's a new establishment out on Route 16 in Douglas. It is almost as common, becoming almost as commonplace as liquor stores, if you will.
And we might want to also think, look at some of the other, we're talking about marijuana cultivation right now, but I'm also wondering about, we had that situation where we had that applicant come before us that wanted to put a marijuana dispensary down on Schofield Ave. And that was almost a ridiculous situation where they wanted to do that, and literally the neighboring property was in the Mill Overlay District. So it could be done there, but it couldn't be done on their property, where they had a building owner who was ready, willing, and able to lease them the property for that. And it seems like they kind of got, and what, I think what we told them was that they needed to get the zoning changed, and, well, I think we remember how that went. That basically got.
Speaking of the Mill Overlay District, I have a question for the planner. Bill, in your opinion, like, if with this new development going in for the Stevens Linen Mill, let's say they just have some number of square footage in a basement someplace in there or something that they can't develop into apartments or something like that, and they wanted to offer it as self-storage space for the residents that live there. Is that possible in the Mill Overlay District? Could they do that in there, do you think, or is that something that would be permissible?
I'd have to look at the bylaw. It allows for commercial uses, and I think you could categorize that as a commercial use. So, I'm not sure, but I think maybe they could do that.
Okay. So then it might be possible in all the Mill Overlay Districts.
Can you add a permitted use to a Mill Overlay District?
Yes, we did that. We did that.
So we could
last
just say that self-storage facilities are permitted use in Mill Overlay District.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
We
We have to go to town meeting?
Self-storage
Yes.
overlay.
I think so.
But it wouldn't be.
I'll make a motion tonight.
It wouldn't be its own, it wouldn't be its own overlay district. It would be, it would be
would be
running
within.
coherent with the
With the
Mill
Mill
Overlay.
Overlay District.
There were a couple of mill overlay districts where that might be possible. One, the mill had been torn down, and the other one was the old Yankee Ethan Allen property, which is basically condemned, so that'll have to come down at some point. So theoretically, if you did that, there would be two places where that could go in.
Could go in, okay, it's a start. Okay, so we have, I don't think we're gonna get any participation from the audience.
It must all be in agreement, Mr. Chairman.
So we need a recommendation from the planning board on the town refuse disposal district map change.
Right. So we should close the public hearing and then do our vote?
Yes.
Okay. So at 8:48, we're gonna close the public hearing and vote on Article number 1, which was to amend the Dudley zoning map to modify the existing TRD district, and include some additional lands that are town-owned into this TRD district for the purposes of a future solar farm.
So that we need a recommendation from the board to either, to town meeting, which would be either to pass or not to pass.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we make a recommendation to town meeting to approve the Dudley zoning map modification for the existing town refuse disposal district to include the following town-owned properties as stipulated in number 1.
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to second that.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? And we're gonna have to, you believe that number 2 is just gonna get ruled out of order?
I don't
It's
think
not
it
even
even
on the
appears
warrant.
on the warrant.
It's not even
no.
on the warrant, okay,
And
Gone.
3 is not on the warrant in this form, it's on as a landowner petition.
okay.
You
And
I did include the warrant for you. You could take it out of the binder if you wanted to have it for town
The
meeting.
Doherty's article is still on the warrant.
Yes. So
we
this is-
don't have to vote on that now, because it's probably gonna be ruled out of order.
We don't make an approval or vote on a citizen's petition or a petitioner, do we?
Usually make a recommendation.
Yeah, I would say that's a good point. I think we probably should, because it is a zone, you have to have a recommendation on all zoning articles. But in this case, I think it will be ruled out of order, so it might be safer to go ahead and
make a vote to
Make a-
pass it over.
Or you'd have to have a recommendation to approve or not approve the article.
So it has to be no.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's a moot point. It
Right.
can't
If
go
it
anywhere.
comes up,
so.
then, yeah, you'd have to say no for reasons that town council had identified.
All right, so would somebody like to make a motion on?
Chairman, quick question.
Sure.
If we make a recommendation that this is not approved, does that create a situation where the Doughertys could not bring that article forward again? No, actually, they're not gonna need to bring it forward again, because we're gonna put them back in the overlay.
Right, you'd be voting on their landowner petition.
Okay. All
It'd be a
right,
different article.
okay. I just wanna make sure.
All right, so would somebody like to make a motion that we're gonna, how would we word it, Bill? Not recommend,
Not recommend approval.
Yes.
of.
not recommend approval of the citizens petition?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we not recommend approval of the Landover petition of Robert and Lynn Dougherty to amend the Dudley zoning map to place the property of Corbin Road into the marijuana cultivation overlay district.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Did I misunderstand that? I thought that we were, that number 2 for the marijuana cultivation overlay district, we were voting to make a recommendation not to approve.
No.
And for number 3,
Number two's
Number
not on
two's
the
been
warrant.
taken off.
It's been taken off.
it's already been
the
taken
warrant.
off.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that
Yeah,
part.
and so has 3.
Understood. For some reason, I got something
Yeah,
mixed up.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Because 3 is still gonna be at town meeting. 'cause
Yeah,
it
that's
wasn't-
what I-
it's-
In a different form than this, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that takes care of,
You also, have on the warrant the UCH TIF zone and district and agreement, which you don't have a formal, planning board part in that action, but it is on the agenda. You were part of the public hearing on that article. So, as you know, the traffic study has been submitted. We had a pretty lengthy discussion on those traffic issues at the hearing. We have enlisted another professional traffic engineering firm to do a peer review. That's Vaness and Associates, Inc. is
Okay.
doing the peer review. I suspect that will be submitted in 2 weeks, but after town meeting, is my understanding.
Okay.
So as you know, the traffic is a significant part of the special permit process. So there'll still be an opportunity for the board to get into the meat of the traffic issues during the special permit process. And I'm told that that may be submitted later this week, the special permit application for the mill
Okay.
project. So what I wanted, maybe we don't have to do it now, but I want to, talk to you about setting up a date for the public hearing for that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to the planner. So the information that had been provided with regards to the traffic study, were provided at the last meeting, is to be augmented. There's additional information that's forthcoming.
The study is final,
The study is final.
but we have a peer review.
Ah,
So the peer review will critique that study, and they may identify flaws. So there may be some further requests by the planning board
To
for
correct the
changes to that traffic
Mr.
flow.
Chairman, I anticipate that there may be some questions with regards to the traffic study.
Who's funding the peer review? Who's paying for it?
The applicant, has cost $6,000.
That's the problem.
It actually, came to the town as part of their, fees for approval, and then the town hired the peer review consultant, so there's no, conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Is
So
the
the-
time frame for the TIF still 20 years?
Yes. The agreement is on the website if you want to see it. It's
Mhm.
on the planning board page under documents. It's a draft.
There, if I may, Mr. Chairman, there is one typo in there. The word is fist instead of first.
Okay.
I forget on which page exactly that occurred, but there was at least the one typo in there.
Okay. So, the motion on town meeting is just to create the TIF district, the map, and the agreement. And the traffic really is ancillary or
and are
not part of the vote, really.
we gonna be asked to comment on that, or is it gonna be going to the Board of Selectmen?
You don't have a formal role in that.
Okay.
If, Doesn't mean you couldn't weigh in if you wanted to, but it's not required.
Okay.
So are the negotiations all done?
Yes. I believe.
So when did that become public? Because I know that was a lot of executive sessions, right, that they did all of this.
Probably, I believe it was executive sessions, and then when the agreement was finalized, I'm not sure when it actually got posted publicly.
Mr. Chairman, if I recall, the September 27th meeting of the Board of Selectmen, which was a joint meeting with the FAA and the Capital Improvement, I believe, I thought I understood from something Mr. Ruda had said, the town manager, that there was still discussions
Yeah, they went into
that
executive
hadn't
session at
finalized
that.
as of that date, anyway.
Yeah, I think they went into an executive session at that meeting, or after that, after we
Yeah,
left.
I wasn't part of that process, so I can't
Yeah.
say.
So, again, through the chair, we will have opportunity to address some of the questions with regards to the traffic study specifically. I have another issue that I think needs to be addressed too in terms of parking.
Is that okay?
My understanding of our zoning bylaws is for multi-residence, a multi-resident building, it's 1.5 parking spaces. And for a motel, hotel, it's 1 per. I'm not sure which this fits into. It doesn't sound like it's either or.
Though it's 1.5, I think it's clear that
1.5?
it's per unit in a
All right,
multifamily
so,
structure.
Not 1.5, it's 1.5 per unit, not 1.5 per bedroom,
Per unit, I believe.
per unit.
Yes.
All right, and then the question comes up as to 156. You've got a pretty, there's a lot of cars in that lot, and Tri-Valley is operational. You're gonna have some kind of a event, a venue, if you will, and you're gonna have a gym. Nowhere in the traffic study is mentioned things like Amazon, UPS, US Postal Service, DHL, Grubhub, and all of those things that are out there. If you drive anywhere in any town now, and you don't find yourself behind an Amazon van, you're not awake. I mean, it's gonna happen. You know, I'm not sure, I'm
I
not
think
sure how
those-
many parking spaces there are there, but I think there is a question that needs to be addressed in terms of how they're gonna fit all that in there.
Well, I think those are valid questions, and our peer review consultant should be able to help.
Because the consequence is, if there aren't enough parking spaces, where are those folks going to go for a wedding event, let's say? They're gonna go onto the public roads,
Yeah.
which are
Narrow.
probably not best suited for additional, I don't think there's anybody that is likely to be parking on most of those roads now, but the thought that people would consider doing that is probably not in the public safety issue.
Right.
Probably is a public safety issue, rather. All right, so.
Yeah, so we'll have lots of
It'll be
time.
an interesting
Yeah.
discussion, I'm sure.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that ends the public hearing and the proposed zoning amendments. And next on the agenda is standard business, discussion, status report on finishing construction of acceptance of unaccepted subdivision streets, including Pierpont Estates, Rocky Hill Estates, Piasta Road, Country View Estates, Tobin Farms, Lion Estates.
The only update I have on those is Country View Estates. The last meeting, the board asked me to contact Dan Haney, the developer of Country View, if he intended to bring the roads to town meeting for acceptance. He just sent me a brief note saying he's away and he'll get back to me later. But, so he's aware of our concern, and I don't know what he wants to do about it, but I'll keep you informed as that advances.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, under F, Lions Estate, discussion of open space, obviously, we've had that discussion earlier, but there is at least one other subdivision, I believe, pending on Jesse Road?
That has been approved already.
That
so
has been
it's
approved?
not
What
pending.
is the status of the open space there? Has that 3-year window expired? Because I think that subdivision dates back to some,
I don't know, I wasn't here at the time, I'll have to check.
I know that they just went before conservation and asked for an extension on the covenant there.
I
saw
know
that.
it hasn't expired from the planning board approval yet. I'm keeping track of the approval
I
deadlines.
realize that. I think we may have been a bit surprised with the explanation, at least I was, in terms of the 3-year window and that having expired 11 or so years ago. I'm just curious as to what other properties might be impacted or affected by such.
On that issue, I did forward, the question that you had about that open space to the selectmen. I haven't heard back from them yet. They're,
Sounds like it's a moot point at this juncture.
well,
Well, that's the applicant's
Yeah, it is true.
view, not,
True.
not town council's view.
Right. I do recall, Mr. Chairman, his mention of having been reviewed by council. I assume that to be his council.
yes.
Yeah, I think the whole point was that if we present it to the selectmen and they say that they're not gonna have any interest in it, it just kind of green lights it for us to.
It's a moot point. You can give a waiver and
waiver,
call it a
right.
day, yeah.
Right.
But I do remember, Mr. Edmiston, maybe you remember too, but I think the one on Jesse Road, there is some portion of the land, I forget if it's at the end of the cul-de-sac or on the back, on the lower side of the, on the lower side of the cul-de-sac, that was gonna be set aside for the open space on that one?
My recollection is there was something behind, so with the street between Jesse Road and Mason Road, on that side of the
Yeah,
house is
yeah,
there.
I
So-
thought there was a strip of land there.
Correct, yep.
It's probably rather wet, so that's
Yes.
probably why it's gonna
That
be
was-
set aside for
that
open
was
space.
Before I joined the board, so that had to be a
Yeah,
little while then.
yeah, I do remember there was something set aside there for open space, so it's in the subdivision.
Now, let me, for my own information, when does the meter start running? Is it when the definitive plan has been approved? Is that when the 3-year window comes into effect, or is it some point earlier in the
I
process?
believe it's the date of endorsement.
Date of
I
endorsement.
believe so.
Where do we stand with Jesse Road? Nothing, there's no endorsement yet, then?
Oh, no, it's approved, it's an
It's
approved
approved.
subdivision.
Okay, so
Yes, fully approved.
the 3-year window, the meter for
It's
which
ticking, right.
has begun and may in fact have expired,
It's pretty close to expiration.
pretty close to.
Yeah,
I
I
believe
mean, I
it's
think if,
May, I think it's May of next year.
I think if an individual bought that property as approved and went in and built exactly what was approved, then I would think that that statement that was made earlier, that the 3 years is expired, but I think if somebody bought that property
Mm-hmm.
as it was approved and came back and wanted to make changes to that property, then
Mhm.
I think the clock would start all over
Start
again.
over again? To my recollection, Mr. Chairman, and you may have better memory of this than I don't recall hearing at a Board of Selectmen meeting any consideration of purchasing open space.
No. As far as I know, it hasn't been done since I've been here in 20 years in Dudley. I mean,
I do understand that the Jesse Road project is up for sale.
Yes, that was my understanding as well.
What's been up for sale?
Yeah.
Been on the market for, well,
since it's been approved.
changed agents, but it's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting, thank you.
Item 2, inspections and actions associated with site plans. Do we have any of that?
I don't have any update there. You may recall at the last meeting, you reviewed Graves' engineering estimate.
For Legacy Landing?
The applicant, or the landowner, Jim Haynes, had a question which I forwarded up to Jeff Walsh for review, and I haven't heard back from Jeff yet.
Okay.
So as far as I know, that estimate is still valid.
And the developer hasn't come forward with any surety or anything yet?
No.
Okay. My guess is, I think at the time of the year that we're in, I think house building season is probably past, and he's gonna just continue working on the road until spring.
If, for what it's worth, Mr. Chairman, had conversation with the gentleman not that long ago, and I think it was his intent to have something up this month. I don't know how, because there's not much out there right now, there's a lot of mud, but that was his intention.
Well, to get a building permit, he would need to post the whole entire surety from Jeff Walsh's,
Right.
yeah, okay. All right, so that takes care of 2. Number 3, planner's plate.
Just a couple of things. The Mason Road Complete Streets application has been submitted.
Okay,
We had very great cooperation from Ty and Bond in preparing that application.
that's good.
So they did a very good job. We're asking for the maximum of $400,000, which, whether we can get it all done for that amount, we'll see, but.
Go big or go home?
Swing for the
That'd be on
fences.
warrant. That's on the warrant.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, it's on there, I see it.
How soon do they make the decision?
They're usually pretty slow, I guess probably after the new year.
Oh, really, that long? Okay, all right.
But it was a very good application, so I'm hopeful about that. So I mentioned the Stevens Mill application I'm expecting to come in soon.
Mhm.
If it does come in soon, what's your preference in terms of having the public hearing? So we're only having one meeting in November, which would be the second Wednesday of the month. So we could do it then, that would give me enough time to advertise. Or we could do it the first meeting in December, which would be the second Wednesday of the month. So those would be your, the two options for you to consider.
What's the board's pleasure?
December, I think, only because when is the site plan review coming in for, was it Fish Road? I saw your email.
Yeah, I haven't had any communication from them on that, but I did talk to the attorney for Stevens, and he said he'd be dropping it off either Thursday or Friday.
What about Hall Road?
I don't have any knowledge of when those will be coming in. I'm assuming soon, but I don't have any time frame.
I don't
So
know,
you're
I
gonna
guess it
have a
doesn't
lot-
matter because I mean, it could, no matter what we decide, we could end up having.
So if you did this one in the first meeting in October, at least you'd have the initial hearing underway for that. Which
You mean November?
November.
Right, in November.
Okay, yeah, so, what do you think, November?
November? First meeting in
First
November?
week in November?
It's the second
Second
Wednesday, yeah.
Second Wednesday, yeah. So before, getting back to the meeting schedule, so in October, we got a regular meeting scheduled on the 27th, and then we got town meeting on the 25th. Do we have anything on the agenda right now for the 27th?
No.
What's the board's, what does the board think about having just a meeting before the town meeting on October 25th and canceling the meeting on the 27th, if there's nothing on the agenda?
I think that sounds reasonable.
I don't have a problem with that.
I'm good.
Okay,
So say that again?
So
we will cancel the meeting of October 27th, because there's nothing on the agenda right now, and we'll have a brief meeting before town meeting at the Shepherd Hill High School before town meeting on October 25th, because we're gonna probably all be at that meeting anyways.
Okay.
So if anybody has something that's urgent, they could bring it to that meeting before the town meeting, and we could, if it's an A&R or something quick, we could do it
Okay.
before the town meeting.
Okay,
So even if we had to start our meeting at 6 o'clock and the town
Okay.
meeting starts at 7, we could do that.
I'll play that by ear then. If something comes in, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Do we currently have a meeting scheduled before the town meeting?
No, except
Because you
we
have,
talked about it,
Right.
and, so
you
it
can-
was
you can,
agreed upon,
right, so we can post that at some point in time.
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
So that's, the October meeting is, I'm sorry, October, the November meeting is November 10th, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that would be the opening of the hearing. There are likely to be several continuances
Right,
as you review that and get additional information in, so.
and I'm sure we'll have a lot of public input, or at
Right.
least interest to see what's gonna happen.
Right.
What's that, in regards to the mill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, depending on the vote at the town meeting, there may or may not, I don't know where that puts that whole thing. I mean, if the TIF is not approved at town meeting, not
Do you-
too sure where we go in
Do you
terms of
think the-
proceeding.
Do you think the project would be canceled, or do you think they would still continue?
You know,
You don't know?
taxes would be very high on that property.
It
Well,
certainly
that
would put it
agreement-
back in play
Right.
in any event, I
So,
think.
I'm not sure what the applicant would do.
Okay.
You probably know more than I. Have you heard of any opposition to this program?
I mean, I think it was brought up at that public hearing that we had, that there was a TIF in place for the mill when it was operating. So, I mean,
Right.
I think in typical fashion, voter apathy is going to basically reign. And then what's gonna happen is gonna happen, and then people will be outraged. When it'll be too late for them to act. In other words, just because it's quiet now,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't assume anything.
Okay. Let me see. So, That's it, that's all that I had. I mentioned the peer review of the traffic study is underway. So that's it.
Okay. Number 4 is the overview of the GIS data and Slate Oliver mapping program. I think that was postponed from our last meeting.
Yeah, are you still interested in doing that?
Yeah, do you have that,
I'll set that up for you,
presentation?
sure. Maybe we
Okay.
could go through the rest of the agenda and,
Yeah. Number 5, comments from the planning board?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention, I caught the last zoning meeting, and the applicant for the marijuana dispensary on Hall Road went before the zoning board and was requesting 2 variances on that lot. And it was interesting, the end result was 1 or 2 of the board members kind of didn't like the idea that they had come to planning first and gone through all that before they came for the zoning, because they figured that we might make changes that are gonna just require them to go back to zoning and things might change. So their recommendation to the attorney that was making the application for the variances was withdraw your request for the variances, because if we deny it, you can't come back for 2 years. So they withdrew their request, but during the discussion, they talked about the parking spaces. Because they're saying they have a traffic study that says that based on the volume that they expect at that facility, that they're only gonna require, I think it was 12 parking spaces.
Something silly like that, yeah.
Yeah, 12 parking spaces. Then they looked at the plan and they said, I believe there was only 9 spaces, and one of those spaces was a handicap spot, so they really only had 8. And the attorney said that they had more parking in the back, but that would be leased. And then one of the zoning board members very astutely pushed the issue and found out that the lease was apparently just a year-to-year lease. So the concern immediately came up, what happens if they open the business and then they lose their lease for the additional parking? And now all of a sudden, Dudley has a business that's gone into that location and could have a big parking problem.
Well, I mean, I think everybody knows that the one that is open, the dispensary that opened up in Oxford, not too far down the street from the police station, probably has a similar situation where they have limited parking, and they actually have a shuttle bus that takes people from a parking lot down the street to the dispensary.
They have a hell of a lot more than 8 or 9 spots.
Right,
there.
right.
So I gotta be close to 20 at least.
Yeah, and they can't make it work there,
Right.
so what makes them think it would work in Dudley?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if they had 9 spots, is that total? I mean, employees?
It's not a big,
Well,
it's not a big parcel.
I was wondering that too, but nobody asked that question, whether or not that included the parking
I would assume, I mean, I'm just looking at the facility in Oxford, and I see at least 1 person outside as security, and sometimes 2. And my assumption, and I know that's a nasty word to use, my presumption, if you will, is that there have to be at least 2 or 3 inside. So if each drove their own vehicle, there's 5 of your 9 gone.
They also discussed that bad intersection there.
It is.
Hall Road, where the court, going across the Lions Road, and the visibility there. And they actually said that the plan was to make it a left turn only out of the parking lot. But I thought that was kind of interesting, because I was thinking, how do you enforce that?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
They tried that at Treehouse Brewery with with right turn only, and that didn't work.
I think that even came up during that. I think when-
Mr. Wetruba, some of my concerns with the traffic study with regards to the mill too is, and I think it goes back to that nasty word, if you will, enforcement. You can put all the signs in the world up, and I think the town has invested quite liberally in speed limit signs, but I don't see a lot of people paying a whole lot of attention to them. And, I mean, I live on Airport Road, and for God's sakes, that looks like an Autobahn. I mean, if you were back in Germany, you'd feel right at home. And, the requisite number of BMWs and Mercedes going up and down that thing is amazing. So somebody obviously is doing pretty well, and maybe they wouldn't, worry about an insurance impact. But speeding in this town is epidemic.
Well, I mean,
And I don't think a right turn only sign is going to get any more respect than a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit.
I live off of Hall Road, and I never go to that intersection to take a left. If I have to take a left, I'll go around and come out by Cumberland Farms.
Okay.
So you're speeding down the airport road then?
No. Okay, so.
I have a
that's-
comment.
Sure.
Before I was appointed as a full member, I made a commitment to attend an event in Auburn on the same night as the 25th, so I can't be here on the night of our town meeting.
Oh, okay.
So
We'll still have a
I
majority.
just want to make sure.
Yeah, we're good. We still have a
Sure.
majority, that's fine. That's no problem. Anything else from the board? Because I don't think we're gonna get any comments from the audience. And I think we already went through our other business, which was the next meeting dates. So the next regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board, which was October 27th, is gonna be canceled for a meeting prior to the town meeting on the 25th of October at Shepherd Hill High School. And then, next item down there, we have approval of consultant vouchers and payment of bills.
We have 2 invoices in tab F.
Okay.
The first one is from Graves Engineering for, it's now Country Club Acres, formerly known as Legacy Landing, the amount of $1,411.45. It is itemized in the invoice. Much of the time here is spent on estimating the construction costs for that, for completing that project. The second invoice is from the Worcester Telegram and Gazette for the legal notice for the UCH TIF public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, to the planner, Bill, I have already signed this invoice regards to Legacy Landing / Country Club Acres. I have abstained or recused myself for anything else regarding that property. Should I have signed that?
You don't have to.
Previous invoice, you mean?
We can just get another copy to sign if you don't want to.
Well, just questioning whether I should
Yeah,
have.
I would say yes, probably should abstain.
Okay, all right.
I don't think
Well,
there's any harm done, you know.
Yep, no problem.
Just to be,
It occurred to me that
Yeah.
for consistency's sake, stay away from it
I would
entirely.
say so, right?
Bill, just a question here. I'm looking at the itemized list from the Graves bill.
Yep.
Right below the 141145, there says there was a previous unpaid amount of 165280. So there's a new total of 306425.
We had approved that 165280 at a previous meeting,
We did, okay. So it
Probably just haven't
probably
got-
just got crossed in the mail.
yes.
All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to pay the 2 invoices that were discussed with the town planner? The one for Country Club Acres and the other one for that was for the advertisement, right? Legal notices?
Mhm.
So you wanna make a motion?
I have to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman.
I make a motion that we pay the 2 bills, the one for Stonebridge Press and the one for Graves Engineering, as discussed and presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll make a motion to second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're gonna have,
One abstention, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
4 yes and 1 abstention.
That's my fault. Probably.
Or did you just go no?
I'm on this one. to both of, you're up here, that's my name, that's my signature.
I think that's all.
Somebody signed on mine, okay.
No,
It's
no,
above.
that was,
I thought the same thing, that's Dan, he's up there.
All right.
Okay, so that takes care of the invoices. Is that the end of the agenda? Other town notices?
I do have one on tab D. Received a letter from the highway superintendent today, actually this afternoon, about the driveway at 19 Progress Avenue. We talked about that before, where the driveway exceeds the slope standard in the zoning bylaw. And as this letter details, the highway superintendent asked the applicant to modify the driveway to cut across the grade to go up to minimize the slope and conform to the standard of the bylaw. The applicant said he wasn't able to do it. The commissioner isn't satisfied with that, excuse me, the highway superintendent is not satisfied with that answer. I believe the applicant has gone to the ZBA for a variance from that requirement.
Really? You
If
can
the
get a
ZBA
variance on
denies it,
that?
then you'd have to conform to the standard through some way to minimize the grade.
Well, kudos to the highway department superintendent for sticking to his guns on that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is in regards to 19 Progress Ave specifically, is that right, Bill?
That, yes.
There were other properties being built on Progress Ave. I'm not sure, last time I looked, I wonder if the same condition doesn't apply on some of those others as well. Because I think they were on the same side of the road, at least.
I think it might even be, Marty's might be on the
Yeah.
corner.
This may be
There's a whole
The
parcel
first of
back
many.
more involved than just the one
Right.
specific
about it.
19 Progress Ave issue.
Doing these,
I think you're right. I think that's a pretty steep hill there that they need to conform to, so I think now that they know, they'll have to conform.
Is just reading the tea leaves ahead, Bill, is that something that would typically be waived by a zoning board of appeals?
Well, it's a zoning requirement, so they have to issue a variance by finding.
But, I mean, the issue of variance, is that something that in past practice has occurred with some frequency?
Granting a variance requires a conformance to some very strict standards, so it's not an automatic yes. I mean, they have to prove that
To
the
prove a
conditions
hardship.
relating to soil shape or topography of the lot
Okay.
make conformance to the bylaw, not possible. So in this case, they can make an argument. It's up to the ZBA to decide whether it's legitimate.
I mean, unfortunately, I think the damage is done, the house is built. Unfortunately, for the people who may live across the street, if somebody buys that property and uses the garages and comes out of the garage and it's an icy day, they may end up driving down the hill and across the street and into the other house.
In the living room.
Right, so, I mean, maybe the, developer could do something with a guardrail or something, I don't know. He's gonna have to make a case and do something, I would think. The bylaw driveway was instituted for public safety, so,
Right.
if you're not gonna abide by it, you have to provide some other kind of public safety.
Right. But to that point, in terms of the guardrail, I assume that would be a guardrail on the property where the car would be going into.
Or keeping it out of the.
Keeping it off that property, but still would not preclude it hitting, striking another vehicle coming down the road.
Right,
So it's some betterment, for if you will, but it's not an absolute safety.
no. No. Okay, other correspondence, we did, I'm guessing we're all set on that?
Yes.
All right, so you have this, overview?
Yes. So the reason I thought this might be useful is that there's a lot of data and information publicly available on a whole host of geographic information, and just wanted to give you the a way to get access to that data so that when you review plans that come before you, you can look at existing data on that property and the surrounding area to help you, inform your decision about what the impacts of a particular project might be. So there are two sites here that I thought I would give an overview on, and those are the Assessors Data, which is on the town website, and then a program called Oliver, which is on the Mass GIS website. So the town data has a lot of the Mass GIS data, so you'll see some overlap here. So to get to the assessors data, log into the town website under government, click on assessors, and that brings you to the assessors page where you then click on GIS mapping. And that will bring you to the GIS page on the assessor's website. There's a disclaimer here that you have to agree to. So as you can see then, you come up with a base map which shows the town and roads. There's the layers that are available for reviewing and querying are here under the Layers tab. By default, the property layer is checked off, and you can see the different information that's available here. When you zoom in to the map, the parcel lines appear. So they're only when you're zoomed into a certain point do they actually show up. And then you can see the information about the parcels that are available here. You can, with this cursor, you have an eye, which basically means information. You can query a parcel, and that will bring up this menu of information that's available.
Can you access or enter a specific parcel if you
Yes.
wanted to look at Progress Drive number,
Yes.
Progress Ave number 19
Correct.
specifically?
So under search, you can search by parcel number, owner, or address. So if we said 19 Progress, comes up, and so you click on it, and then that brings you to that
Just a
property.
lot. Okay.
Okay, so that's where it is.
Okay, so in the first instance, it showed an actual structure. In this case, it's just showing the lot lines.
It's not that up to date, Bill.
Yes.
It's not up to date,
Yeah.
okay.
It'll take a couple of months before the picture of the house
Oh,
gets taken and
okay.
put into the website.
All right.
So then again, the information that's available is quite extensive. It's the assessor's data that they make publicly available. So you can look at, the location, who the owner is, what the assessed value is, et cetera. And then it goes, since there's no property or no home on this particular property, then some of this information, some of the fields aren't filled out. For example, the building attributes.
Mhm,
But for other properties, they are. And you can see, what the use code is. This is considered a, residential accessory land, I think. That's what that means. The size of the property. So that, I think, is helpful. If we clicked on one that actually has a building, you can see some of the information would be filled out. There's a photo of the property, which should pop up for that one. The property record card will show, again, the address, the owner. The book and page number could be important if you wanted to look at the deed for a particular property. The building attributes table is now filled out about information on the property. A lot of this information probably available from realtors and whatnot, but the assessors have this information, and they use it to determine the assessed value of the property. This one is coded as a 1010, which is a single-family home. The zone is residential 10. The assessed value is $55,900. These are estimates of Well, it's interesting, this is the land value, I'm sorry, 55.9 is the land value, and this is the assessed value of the land plus buildings. So you can see the property has increased by about $8,000 or so over the 2-year period. The other kind of information that's available by looking at the layers menu, we can look at, contours. So you can see there are contours. They're kind of faint here, but if you wanted to look at the topography of a particular site, the contours would be a good way to do that. We have wetlands. So those are the wetlands that show up. If we query the wetlands, it's probably not a lot of information on the wetlands themselves. So I guess there's no information on the wetlands, but other than the fact that they are wetlands, which is good to know where the wetlands fall. There's some information on the census. We have information on the census tracts, of which there are 2 in town. So so this layer, let me turn these other layers off. So the census tract boundaries are shown here. There's a tract here, and then there's the rest of the town. It's not really showing up that clearly here. So here's the census. This is one census tract, which is in the older developed part of town, and then this is the other census tract for the rest of the town. The reason is they try to have population in each tract roughly comparable. So the town population now is about 12,000 people, so each of these tracts should roughly have about 6,000 people. We can look at the block groups,
The
which
distribution
are
of that.
finer delineation within each tract. So in this tract, you can see there's block group 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In this one, there's looks like there's 2. There's one north of West Main and one south of West Main. And then there's further delineation of actual blocks. So for example, if we look at this block, hopefully that'll pop up. No, I'm sorry, let me turn off the property map and just see what happens. Okay, so that's a tract. That came up because that's checked. If we turn that off and look at the block data, and click on this block, the information on that block comes up. So what you're querying, it's better to turn everything else off except the one you want information on, and then you can query that layer. So this is the 2010 data from the US Census. You can see it tells you what tract it's in, what the block number is. This is block 1022. It gives you the area in land in square feet, the area in water, so there's no water within this tract. I think this is the center point, latitude and longitude of that tract. The area in square feet, which is 1,442,000, well, whatever that is. 1,444,220.27 square feet, or 33 acres. The population on that tract was 70 people. There were 35 housing units. So there's good, all this is readily available on the town website. You can look at floodplains in the town, which is good to know whether a particular property is in the floodplain or not. You can see that we can look at the various floodplain categories by color here, so that we could look at this floodplain. You can see it's actually, well, to go up here, which is, I think, Larner Pond, but you can see that that is in Zone A, which is the 100-year floodplain, which corresponds to this color over here. And then there'll be some other information, but it's really not that useful. It's more technical, I think. But it does give you the area. This is usually in square meters, so you'd have to convert that to acres or square feet. But I think geographically, it's nice to know where the floodplain is. So this one, for example, is Zone X, which is a 0.2% chance of annual, 0.2% annual chance of flooding. It's like the 500-year floodplain is what it used to be called. So that information is good to have. Historic data consists of 3 different layers. There's historic sites, historic areas. Excuse me, there are just two categories. So, for example, if we wanted to know what an historic site was, we could, click on it. That tells you the state inventory number. It's a building. So there are like buildings or monuments, other kinds of things which might be on the National Register, or the address. And what's important about that building, it's a single-family dwelling, and it's significant because of its architecture. This one has a name, T. Stapleton Barn, the address. And you could, in fact, use the inventory number to go to the Mass Historic website to get more information about this property. You'd have the access to the actual inventory form that was filled out by the town many years ago. We have historic areas, which would be primarily historic districts. So, for example, this is Dudley C, which doesn't tell you a whole lot, but its historic name is Merino Village. Common name is the Jericho Stevens Linen Works housing area. It's in Dudley, of course. And it's significant because of the architecture, commerce, community planning, ethnic heritage, and industry. So, that is identified as an...
Who made that determination? Was that the town?
Yes.
Okay, because the only thing I understand that's recognized as an historic district is that section of Center Road.
Yes, the Dudley Hill.
Yeah. Black Tavern.
This may not be currently up to date.
Hampshire Road.
It's been accepted to the National Register, which
Right.
would appear here under designation, but this data hasn't been updated since that was approved.
Couple of years
So there was a
ago.
time lag. It was just last
Last year?
spring, I think,
Okay.
it was accepted. So that's an historic area. You could, also look at the individual buildings within that area if you wanted some more information about some of these properties. So each of these properties, because they are in a National Register district, are considered on the National Register. So you have to conform to whatever requirements. Actually, for this is really more of a recognition of the historic character of the area. It doesn't have any regulatory consequences.
What is that one on West Main Street?
Excuse me?
What is that one that was on West Main Street, on the south side of West Main Street?
Sure. This one?
What is that?
Progress Avenue area?
That's,
The what?
It's
that's
called
a
the Progress.
historic area?
It's not been accepted on the register. It's merely been identified.
What is it again?
It's called the Progress Avenue area.
Progress Avenue area?
is the name that's been given to it.
What's the unique architecture there?
The driveway.
Well, it could be the age, could be the character of housing, it could be like workforce housing. It might not be classic New England architecture, but it represents a significant, a point in time of how land developed in the country. So it's an example of, say, worker housing or something of that sort.
Okay, so there could have been an historic farm that might have
Could
been
have been,
located
yeah.
on that property at some point, perhaps, something like that?
So in this area, we can look at maybe a particular property, just to see what it says. Oh, let me turn off the area designation. So this is called the Nicola D'Alessandro House. It's a building, the address, constructed in 1940. It's an example of craftsman architecture, which would mean something to historic preservationists, I'm sure. And it's significant because of its architecture. So, this information lets you explore the town, what's going on, what was built, what's there today, what's good, what's not good about it, that kind of thing. Then it also has a category here with MassGIS data. So for example, if you're curious about dams in town, we can look at the dam data. And this information shows you whether what the hazard level is of these dams.
Oh, yeah, let me see that. Let me see the Larned Pond Dam.
Larner Pond, this one here?
Yeah, that's the one, that's the one on Sawmill right between the two. What's that?
Dams, okay, it's regulated by the Office of Dam Safety. It's a municipal dam, it's owned by the town, it's under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. Gives you a latitude, longitude coordinate. It's been verified, the name, it's been identified as a significant hazard, which is
Yeah, okay, I
this
agree.
yellow, as opposed to a high hazard.
What's worse, a high hazard or a significant?
It's green, yellow, red, so red is
Aye,
Is
is
more-
worse.
prone, more dangerous than a yellow.
All right, so what color is that one?
That's a yellow.
That's a yellow, all right, so where's the red dams in town?
Marino Pond Dam, for example.
Really?
That's what it says. So it says it's a high hazard, which is this highest category of hazard. So there are dam inspection reports that are required for the town to perform. I believe it's every 2 years, which are submitted to the Office of Dam Safety. So
Some damn people come and do it.
So there would be actual reports prepared on each dam. At a public record, you could contact the Office of Dam Safety if you wanted that report on that dam, and that would tell you what the particular concern is.
Well aware what the concern is
Um,
downstream from it.
So then we have rare wildlife habitats, rare species habitats, vernal pools, potential vernal pools. All this information. Maybe we could look at the DOT road data for a second, because that often comes up in terms of what information is available on roads in town. So for example, if we wanted to know something about Negus Street, we could click on that. And this is the information that Mass DOT has on their road inventory file, which is available here on the town website. So we have a street name. I'm sorry, that's in Webster. Sorry
I
about
was
that.
just gonna say, it's
Yeah.
Negus Street in Webster.
Let's pick a street in
This is
in
Negus
Dudley.
Street.
Okay, so now we have Chestnut Street. It's the name. There's, different kinds of identifiers. We have,
You can't see like traffic counts, can you?
Yes, you can,
Oh, really?
for streets that have enough traffic to actually have a count on. So for example, if we looked at West Main Street, for example. It's, identified as Route 12, which it is, and 197 further down. It tells you the distance of this particular road segment. It tells you, where it goes all the way to the state line. Mileage counted means that it's counted in the town's road mileage for Chapter 90 reimbursement. If there's a zero there, then it's a private road and it wouldn't be counted. We can see, there's some other information that you would find interesting. There's different functional categories, classifications of all these roads, which you can look at by getting the road inventory dictionary.
How do you see the traffic count, though?
I don't see a traffic count.
So that's usually at the end. Did you see that yet?
No.
So here's the ADT. Years 2012 was the last count for that section of the road, and the count
Okay.
there was 17,275 vehicles a day.
How many? 17,000?
17,275.
I think the traffic study's talking about the 15s.
So it's decreased, I think, a little bit over time.
Well, this is done in 2012.
The
too.
year is
Pre-pandemic,
12, right,
so-
2012.
Gone up by then.
Yeah, it's sure. I don't know, the pandemic had some effect, I guess, there too.
So this also shows you
Saturday.
whether there are sidewalks and curbs, what the right-of-way width is. It's a 60-foot right-of-way. What the paved width is 28 feet. The surface type, I assume that 6 is a bituminous asphalt. Whether there are shoulders, whether there are sidewalks. So that each street has the same fields, some of which are filled out, some of which are not, depending on the road. So if you wanted to look at any information on any road in town, you can do that.
Who maintains and updates all this information? Is that at the state level?
Mass DOT. This is 28, the latest, I think, is 2018.
2018?
So they keep it up to date. Every couple of years, they update it.
I, just looking at our rules and regulations, we do have protection of natural features in here. Due regard shall be shown for all natural features such as large trees, water courses, scenic points, historic spots, and similar community assets which, if preserved, will add attractiveness and value to the subdivision. This kind of lends itself to identifying some of those.
Does, right,
I
for sure.
suspect the developer may not be making that disclosure.
Right.
Low Pond Dam is red, too.
So, I don't need to go through all of these.
Very interesting.
But there are soils data, if you wanted to look at the soil. The voter precinct data is here, although this is being changed from the 2020 census. We're adding a new voter precinct. So rather than 3, there'll be 4.
Is there topography on there, too? I know you mentioned contour lines, but I just...
That is the primary topographic information.
Okay.
They do have streams and ponds, which would also be considered topography. Soils would be a form of topography, although it's showing grade elevations, but it does show you the soil properties. So this is showing you, the soil, it's 315A, so you need the soil map book in order to identify what that
That big
soil
brother
actually
really
is.
is watching.
The A indicates, the letter here indicates the grade of the soil, and A is 0 to 3% slope, so there is topographic information in each of the soil categories. But there's not a whole lot here. You'd have to go to the book to get the detailed information on the soil characteristics.
Be a soil scientist.
So, it's an amazing amount of information when you think about it that's available.
Amazing.
And the zoning, of course, I forgot about that. If you wanted to, just verify the zoning for a particular property, this is the zoning map. for the town. So it shows, you can turn off the overlay districts to just look at the underlying districts, or you could turn off the underlying districts and just look at the overlay districts. For example, this is showing the, would be the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. Yeah, here's the overlay name, Aquifer Protection Overlay. And it tells you the shape area, which is generally in square meters, I believe. I'm not sure whether there's an acreage category here, but you could calculate that. So maybe this is acreage. I'm not sure. I'd have to do the math, but it does give you an area. Just have to figure out what it means. Here's the town refuge disposal district, for example, that we just looked at. So this is the current extent of the district. Just wondering if they have the, I thought there was aerial photos in here as well, somewhere. I think there is, I'm not sure where it is exactly. But, so you can look at all the zoning, and then by turning on the property layer and zooming in, you can see, you know, which how the property is zoned.
So Bill, what, you know that appraisal vision online assessors database?
Yes.
What's more current, that or this? In other words, where's the
I would
data
say-
coming? Does the data,
The data is coming from the assessors. I'm not sure how frequently they update this
Right, so
GIS
so the
information.
assessors are regularly updating the assessors database.
Yes.
Vision appraisal.
But this is coming from the state.
Well, this is coming, this site is maintained by the town's consultant. So some of it is MassGIS data, which the consultant takes and loads up.
Yeah.
Some of it is town assessors data, which they get from the assessors and load that up on the site.
Oh,
So I can't tell you how current the assessors, records are here.
If you go to Vision Appraisal and you look at their head page for Massachusetts, where all the towns that they service are,
mhm.
they tell you how fast it's updated. And when you look at Dudley, it says updated daily.
Okay. All right.
I don't know exactly the answer to that question, but I can find out for you. But at least you get basic information. I think
Guy just answered it.
Okay.
Gavel has the-
I think it's done annually here,
Okay.
is my understanding. Because, for example, when we looked at the valuations, we only looked at 2020.
Mhm.
So probably the 2021 data hasn't been
Loaded up yet.
loaded up yet. Where was I? So you can go on here and explore this on, at your own, and you'll pick up more information than I've just gone over tonight. I just wanted to give you sort of a flavor for the kind of information you can get here.
Not on a Wednesday night.
I was just glad to find out that the tax maps were still there.
Right.
Because I was missing those, but now I found them, so I'm all set.
Yeah.
Between the tax maps and Vision Appraisal, you can find out pretty much anything you need to know.
You're asking about that.
So moving on to the other site that I wanted to go over, it's called
I
Oliver.
gotta take off.
Okay, Dan.
See you guys next time.
Right.
Thank you. So this contains all the MassGIS information. You can query by town if you wanted to zoom into Dudley. You just pick Dudley and you zoom into it. By default, the tax parcels for query and the detailed features layers come up. This yellow exclamation point means that it's not visible at this scale. So if you zoom in, so this has the same information that you just looked at on the Dudley website. Different base map. So this has the topography shown. The buildings are shown here as well. So It's sort of formatted for easier viewing. Again, you can query with this icon, information about.
So who is this?
This is MassGIS. So MassGIS has this sub-site called Oliver, which they make available to the public. So anybody can access MassGIS data.
And this is
Well, yeah,
off
but
the
then we
town.
can access what we were just looking at.
It is. That's what I was saying.
So you get appraisal vision database, the GIS thing we just looked at, and
Right.
now this.
Right.
They're all the same.
So they're the same.
Your tax dollars.
So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one because it's already available at the town website.
All of this is available through the town website.
No, I'm looking at the Oliver website
Look at
now,
the Oliver website.
which
all right.
is the MassGIS
So it
data,
is just the,
some of which is available at the town website.
so if you just went in there on your query line, asked for Oliver, Massachusetts Oliver, this is what you're gonna get?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
not Oliver and Hardy, just Oliver.
So you can look at, state facilities, for example, which aren't on the town website. The floodplain data is available on the town website. You can look at past censuses here if you wanted to see how population has changed over time. The 2020 census identified an environmental justice population in town for the first time.
What again? Environmental justice?
Environmental justice. So this is the pan tool. So if you wanna move it around.
Environmental justice.
So,
What is that?
it's an area that census data has determined to be an area of, I think there are 3 categories. One is high minority population, low income, and I forget what the third is. It would be, I think, English-speaking language. So any one of these categories can trigger designation as an environmental justice neighborhood. And these are considered neighborhoods which have a burden of various unwanted facilities like sewage treatment plants or factories or pollutant sources, 21E sites. It helps.
That's why the name environmental.
Right. It's actually useful when the town applies for a grant. The state will often ask, is your project in an environmental justice neighborhood, and you get additional points for that. So if we click on this layer and then go over here and click on this EJ neighborhood, you can look at information about it, and it will tell you, and it's done by block group, which we looked at before, rather than blocks or tracks. It'll tell you what the 2020 population was, what the white alone population is, the percentage minority of the number of households, 670 households in this block group, and what the reason is for designation as an EJ, environmental justice neighborhood, its income. So that neighborhood is considered more of a lower income neighborhood that meets the state definition of.
We get down to the demographics.
Yeah.
I think at that joint meeting, I brought up the question of Dudley and its population by age. And my thought was that Dudley was an older population than the surrounding towns. Does this give us that information somewhere?
Yes. I think I don't think the 2020 data has been released yet for that category. If we looked at 2010,
The town clerk would have the 2020 information.
what's been released, and it's coming out slowly. We don't have the full 2020 data. It hasn't been released by the Census Bureau. But if we looked at the 2010 census, let's see what's available there. We can look at, let's just say tracts, see what's available at the tract level. So this pops up down below, and then if you click on it and then use the query tool, you'll get information on that tract. So the information that's available on the town website is the area of land and water. I'm sorry, this is the MassGIS website, excuse me, on Oliver. Tells you the area of the tract, the housing units. So it doesn't get down to that level of detail of age, it doesn't look like, that MassGIS has. But if you, somebody who's familiar with how the census data is promulgated can go onto their website and get that information from the census directly.
Okay.
See what else is not available on the town website. This information is pretty much available. The open space data is available on the town website, I just didn't show it. Cultural resources, the historic data is available on the town website. Environmental monitoring stations, may or may not be any in town, I don't know. But that isn't available on the town website. It is here on Oliver. Infrastructure, you know, a lot of this is more appropriate for regional. If you want to look at where the area hospitals are, for example, you might turn on this layer. Where the courthouses are, obviously Dudley has one, so that would show up. The dams, the town has farmers markets, fire stations. So there's, you know, just looking at the sheer number of categories, there's a lot of data available to the public on this Oliver website. And you can query that. Physical resources, anadromous fish locations.
The what?
Anadromous, which are migrating fish, whether there's fish migrate up from the ocean or the sound to spawn in Dudley. I don't know whether there are any in Dudley, but statewide there are.
Interesting.
Land use categories are available here.
Somebody probably had a grant to study that.
For example, if you wanted
Be
to
a
look
lifetime
at,
project here, the depth of that detail, incredible.
so land cover. Is available if you zoom in. So these are the land cover categories. So this is not by parcel, it's through aerial photo interpretation. For example, where are the forests?
Oh, that's very colorful.
And that's called land cover. So in this feature, for example, it's deciduous forest. And it gives you some basic information about it. This orange category would be commercial, I guess.
What intersection is that we're looking at?
So that's here, West Main Street and looks like Mason Road.
Oh, fire station.
Across the street.
Dudley, like the old Dudley Lincoln Mercury.
Right, so I just, you know, you have to play around with it to see what's here, what's available. You know, we're showing here, obviously, single-family neighborhoods. These would be houses and sort of lawn areas that you can identify through looking at aerial photos. And then sort of behind those homes and businesses, you find some forest. So if you were doing, for example, an analysis of impervious surfaces in town, this kind of data would be useful. Where are the farms and forests as opposed to areas that are actually developed? So that data would be used in modeling stormwater runoff, for example. Probably not something that you would be concerned with, but you might be, who knows? Regulated areas, aquifers, those are,
Scenic Roads in there? It must be.
I'm not sure. So these are the 21 E sites, the AU, where there's an activity and use limitation in AUL. So,
How can you make that pop up without all that other stuff?
okay, so we'll turn off or actually, if you right-click, you can remove a layer. We can remove the census tract layer. So, let's see. So these would pop up, right? Somewhere, if there is any, excuse me, if there are any in town. You know, thinking sort of industrial areas might have something that would show up.
You got West Dudley?
Sure.
Road,
What are we looking for?
Like
21 East sites. I can't imagine there aren't any. I thought there was some on West Main Street. The old car dealerships from the,
Mhm.
around Marty's.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking there are, I'm not sure, you know.
Right across from the post office, that was the worst one, wasn't it? The boys, I think,
One of them, yeah.
couldn't do anything with that.
Might be cleaned up now and considered okay.
Really?
Somebody goes and takes a soil sample and it comes back clean, it's good.
So, you know, I'm not seeing any, oh, here's one. Okay, one finally showed up.
Is it the old Wagers Express site?
Yeah, looks like it would be, doesn't it?
The old mill.
I don't know what I need to do to get this to come up. So, saying there's no data on it, that
What
may
side
be,
of the road is that on? Is that down on Schofield Ave?
yes, this is probably the Ethan Allen property, or no, this is the Chase Mill.
Okay.
So there's some activity and use limitation, which means it's gone through the 21E process in order to be determined to be cleaned up. And that this AUL means that there are restrictions on what you can do with that property. So now that we know there's one here, you could go to the DEP website, which has a page on all the 21E sites in the state, and you could query this and find out what was there, what was cleaned up, and what the status of the limitation is for that particular property. Somebody mentioned something else, what was it?
Scenic Roads, I saw that,
Scenic
I saw that
Roads.
on the town website one that you were showing
Right,
us.
so
There was a,
we have that actually in, you know, in the zoning book. The scenic road map is in the back here, and it's on the website if somebody wanted to look at the scenic roads in town. They're right in the PDF of the zoning bylaw.
Who makes that designation? Is that the planning board?
You would nominate them, and it would go to town meeting for acceptance. That was done a couple of years ago. Some other scenic roads were added to the scenic roads layer. So, you know, if you have any other questions or anything else you want to look at, I can look for it here.
or you
So you can
just-
see there's more information here than the town has,
Yeah,
but much of it is the same. I think the town put up what they thought would be of greatest interest to residents, so. that's
it's
all.
amazing that it's all there and it's
Right.
free and all you gotta do is know how to look for it.
Yeah.
That's right. So now you know.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Bill.
So anytime you have any questions, if you're looking there and you have,
See you next year.
Yeah.
right.
Thing is to play around with it.
Yeah, yeah.
One
Have the
thing,
time.
one thing you can do, just as an aside, if you go, you know, I have this on my top line menu, you can go to Mass GIS, and, you know, you can download the data, but you don't have the ability to look at it. But I just wanted to show you one thing. So a lot of the information that you query is associated with the data. So for example, that DOT road data, a lot of it was just numbers and codes. so you don't know what that is, but you can go to MassGIS data, and each layer has associated with it the attributes. So you can find out what those codes were. For example, the class, 1 would be limited access, 4 would be a major road, that kind of thing. Or whether it's an interstate highway or not, a state route, the road type, so you can, what those numbers that you see
All have a meaning.
have a meaning, and you can get a lot of it here.
And that website will give you the legend for everything you need to know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very informative, Bill. Thank you
Okay.
very much for pointing it all out.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if that concludes the agenda items, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Thank you.